Reimagining Success, episode 227. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9-to-5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9-to-5. Okay, hello everybody and welcome back to this month's interview. And I'm here with Jo Wheatley. And Jo, why don't you take it away and tell us right away, what were you doing in your previous corporate life and what are you doing today?
Thanks, Anna. It's great to be here with you. So my background was in HR. I worked my way up from HR assistant all the way up to HR director. And I worked across the private, the public and the third sector. And after the birth of my first child, I'd brought a coach into my organization. I'd had some coaching. I was like, wow, this is a job. I'm going to go and train in this. It's all my favorite bits of HR. I didn't want to be doing disciplinaries and grievances and job evaluations if I was away from the children. And so I trained to be a coach, and I just decided partway through the training, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I ended up co-founding my coaching business in good company in 2011. So I thought, I'll just leave and I'll become a HR consultant. But actually, when Zoe Hawkins and I sat down, and we'd known each other since we started studying for our masters, she'd also trained to be a coach. Our careers had kind of mirrored each other's in different organizations. And when we sat down, we decided actually this was our love, coaching. And so we created our business.
Fantastic. And my head is already spinning a little bit because I have a cold. So I feel like I'm not quite thinking as I usually do, but also because there are lots of interesting angles to that. So I'd love to take it off in different directions. I guess starting with the HR piece, I'm working increasingly with HR in some of my B2B work, but it's a bit of a black box for me. And as you said, I think to some people, unfortunately, you do tend to get involved when something has gone wrong. And so maybe you get a bit of a bad rap and it's not sort of as positive an experience, I guess, either for the employee or for you. How did you find that time? Was it something that you dreamt of at university? How did you land HR and what was that time like for you?
I didn't know that HR existed, like most people, I think, at that time. So I did a law degree, mostly because I loved Ally McBeal, which was a popular program, back at that time for me. And also, I was quite academic. I was quite able in that sense. And so it was kind of law or medicine that I was being kind of signposted to. I don't like needles, so that was not an option. I was interested in psychology, and my dad didn't say to me, don't do psychology, but he's a bit more like maths and English, and psychology was still quite a new topic then. I'm making myself sound really old. I'm not. I'm early 40s. So it kind of like put me off. So I did law. I didn't love it. So I did some work experience. And I also realized at that time that the one-to-one work, which is what I really enjoy doing, or, I enjoyed the thought of at that time, was probably only like 10% of the role. And what I was interested in was family law. And then I was like, well, I haven't had my own family. So I don't know, this isn't quite lining up for me. And I really didn't enjoy the topics that we were doing. And so I got scooped up in the milk round, essentially. And I went into IT recruitment, first of all. And I did really well at it. They had to rewrite the recruitment structure because I was earning too much money in their eyes in commission. Probably wasn't really legal, was it, when I think back? But whilst I was there, I knew it wasn't something that I was in love with. I wasn't in love with IT recruitment. I could do it because it's relationship based, but it wasn't values aligned for me. But I saw the HR person and I thought, oh my goodness, that's where I can use my people skills. It's also where I can use my analytical, my legal brain. This seems like a good role. And so I then moved home, and I live in Devon. I moved back to Devon, and that's when I got a HR assistant role on a temp basis. And the rest is kind of history. I sort of moved every sort of 2 years. I could see, I wasn't going to progress, because people weren't moving, whereas I was quite keen to contribute and grow and develop. And I really loved working in the charity sector. So I worked for young people's an organisation supporting young people. I worked for the probation service. I worked for Debenhams. I worked in retail. I worked for Telewest, which was, it's like TV and it's like Netflix, I suppose, back in the day kind of a thing. So I worked in a whole, range of organisations. And I always say I didn't really plan to have my own business. But then I'm like, but I did choose business studies as an A-level. I think the thing for me, though, is nobody in my family, as far as I'm aware, has ever had their own business. So for me to do that, it's a very new thing. But I've co-founded a business. So, we've given each other the confidence to start a business, to grow a business and, do the things that we've done along the way.
And you're right, we're so affected by our parents, aren't we? Because I think if you've had academic kind of corporate parents and they've done well, that's the kind of path. And as you said, law and medicine tend to be traditionally those sort of academic, high performance kind of roles to go into. And interestingly, you said when you left, the natural thing to fall into is doing consulting in what you were doing. And I did that. I kind of, because I didn't know what I wanted, I landed in digital marketing consultancy, doing similar things I've been doing. And in fact, I even recommend or at least support clients through that because it's a great transition out of working in a full-time job. You can take those skills and experiences, package them up and ta-da.
Yeah.
Quite an easy way to transition. But I suppose I'm curious, how has your definition of success evolved from law, medicine, through to... and in fact, a bit of business sprinkled in there, a bit of recruitment, maybe HR consultancy, and become, as you said, a co-founder, become an entrepreneur effectively.
I think it evolves over time. For me, I don't have a static idea of what success is. So, so my dad had worked in the same place his whole life. My mum stayed at home and looked after us until we went to secondary school and then went back into a part-time role. And I think actually she never really did what she wanted to do with her career. And I think that I just sort of I felt that. And I think in a way, that was an influence on me to drive forward. There's no other girls in my family. So I'm the only girl in the family, the first person to go to university. Lots of those, stereotypical things, I suppose. So initially I'm like, well, I want to earn £30,000 by the time I'm 30. That's success for me. And then obviously when I became a mum, that's a huge identity shift, and so for me, success is, my success in my business is totally related to the success, how well I'm performing, if you like, in the role of mum, but also as wife and, daughter and friend and, all those other roles that I have in my life. So one doesn't stand out. Well, yeah, one does. The role of mum does stand out more than any other. So in fact, at the start of the pandemic, we'd bought a motorhome and we were going to take the children out of school for 5 months. And we were going to take them around Europe because we've taken them to different places in the world, but we just wanted to do this trip while they were still at primary school. And obviously we couldn't go. The time we were due to go end of March. And, I remember my dad saying, what do you think about them like closing down? Like, Dad, they're not going to shut down, here. Obviously, that is what happened. And so we didn't get to go. So, but for me, that, success is about living my life in alignment with my values. And one of my values is adventure. So I love treading new ground. I love doing things for the first time. I'm very driven to show my children new experiences and expose them to new experiences, to help to grow their confidence and just recognize how small this world is and how precious this world is that we live in. So that for me is what I would continually come back to, is living my life in alignment with my values.
I love that. And you mentioned there getting out of your comfort zone and adventure. And I love that. And again, I did a lot of that as well as I left. And I think as a mother, I've sort of retreated a little bit into my comfort zone as things become a bit trickier. And it's a bit different, I suppose. But I love that you're choosing to inspire your kids with that. How and when was it you founded In Good Company?
In 2011.
Okay,
actually, on Valentine's Day. How romantic.
Interesting choice. I think I founded my digital marketing consulting in February, but I missed Valentine's Day by a few days, unfortunately. I think that would have been too much. But that's a while ago now, so that's incredible. So I suppose, how has that process evolved for you as well, but how have you got out of your comfort zone and developed your confidence through what I imagine would be a few ups and downs? Obviously there was COVID, which could have had implications, but even before that.
Yeah, and it's definitely been squiggly. So when we started the business, I had one young child. Zoe then got pregnant. We found out she was pregnant just after we had formed the business. So then it was mostly me in the first year. And then she kind of came back in. So we've had 5 children. I've had miscarriage. You know, we've had lots of different other things that you experience in life during that time. And we have had peaks and troughs. So we found ourselves with a pretty large corporate contract, which we really enjoyed the work. And I remember my husband at the time saying, you know, like, this could change at any time. You really need to sort of be, you know, looking at the new business. But that wasn't our passion. Our passion was to be coaching, and we were just loving what we were doing. We were doing one-to-one coaching. It was a leadership development program. We had ran a number of cohorts, and then they wanted us to do other levels within the organization. But of course, that did naturally come to an end. And so then we were like, we hadn't actually worked on the business enough. We had been working in the business, and that was a big lesson for us. And I don't think we really figured out how to run a successful coaching business until about the time of COVID. So we did a big house renovation, and my husband project managed that. He was also retraining. Zoe was having her 3rd child. There just wasn't, one of my other values is safety and security. And I just wanted to know that I wanted to feel that I had more money coming in than going out. And so, even though I did have enough money to do, I didn't feel that way. And so I took an in-house role as head of people development. And it was all coaching based, and I loved it. And I made a great contribution there. I really expanded my network. And so I did that for about 2.5 years, as well as continuing to coach around the edges as well. And Zoe experimented with some things. So we're still in the business, but also just experimenting with some other bits. And then I finished there in December 2019. So I was coming back into the business, but I was going to be traveling and doing the work. Didn't get to do the travel, which actually from a business perspective was a huge blessing, because what we then did is we were going to transfer some of our coaching training online, but COVID obviously accelerated that. So we rebranded, which was a massive thing to do across all of our content. We updated all of the content. We started using a new learning management software for our clients, which they love. But obviously it's a huge endeavor, changed our accounting. We changed so much stuff, or at least updated it. And I think I returned with a newfound confidence. And Zoe also probably had more confidence. We had greater networks, and we just haven't really looked back from there. And we did the book, we're doing the podcast. We've got our YouTube channel. We've expanded our range of offerings, the accreditation side of things, created our own new stuff, lots and lots of things where we've really backed ourselves in a way that, so what have I had to overcome? Fear of visibility. You know, I remember when we recorded our first live on Facebook. No, we recorded our first video that we were going to upload. And so Zoe said to me, right, I'm going to upload it and post it. And I was like, hang on, wait a minute. And she was like, what? And I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, oh no, I'm supporting my clients all the time to step outside of their comfort zone. And I really felt like they were all kind of stood behind me, supporting me at that point in time. So I thought, right, what do I need in order to be able to let this go and be comfortable enough with it? So I just said to Zoe, can you just add something with it that says, hey, everyone, we've put together this video for you based on X, Y, and Z. If you'd like to see us do other things, please drop us a message, like something along those lines. And that was enough for me to let go of that. And then you just get used to it over time. Like, so produce things in a non-attached way. And so often we'd had conversations behind the scenes, obviously chatting, coaching stuff. And sometimes I'd be like, if only we'd recorded that. Of course, now we kind of do it the other way, and people will suggest to us things they want us to cover. And then we just have a quick conversation, like a few bullet points. It's never scripted, just so we've got an idea of different bits we might cover. And off we go. So yeah, visibility is a big one that I've had to overcome. It's the main one, really. That's the only thing I think that really gets in the way. The rest of it I can kind of figure out.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one. But I mean, I imagine over sort of a decade or more, as you say, something that initially seems quite tricky for me too. When I started doing videos, it was excruciating, and I recorded until they were so horrible that I just gave up entirely. And then I tried live and so on. Yeah. So it's an evolution, isn't it? But I think it's reassuring for people to hear that everybody has struggled, and most of us at least don't find it completely natural necessarily, in particular to talk about yourself and put yourself out there and so on. But I think having a co-founder perhaps helped you, and also obviously really believing in what you had to offer as well.
But what I haven't mentioned is obviously that bit where I step back into an in-house role, and that was a challenging time for us as co-founders. So we had conversations during that time around: do we fold the business? Does Zoe take the business on? Would she change the name? Like loads of different things. And no relationship is perfect, as we know. But what we think that we are able to do is we're able to hold the tension in our relationship. And what we believe is, and trust in, is that, let's say if I had an idea or wanted to approach a particular project in one way, and Zoe obviously is another individual that might want to approach it in a different way. And then we discuss those things. And even if what we end up doing is not better than either of the individual ones, I think often it is better, because we probably will connect with a wider group of people because there's a bit of both of those approaches in what we do. But I think we trust. It's like any relationship. If something's really important to us as an individual, then we'll argue the case for it. And other times we just let it go, And so one of the other things actually we've had to overcome is looping in our conversations. So, for years we would loop, we wouldn't make the decision. We would talk about it round and around and around, and we wouldn't actually just take the steps. And I think what we have is like where one of us has an anxiety about doing something, the other is ready to step forward. So we're happy to take that role on where it's needed in the business. And I think if I was in business on my own, some things I might have done quicker, but there's a lot of things I probably would have done slower. So yeah, I don't want people to think, oh, well, it's just easy, isn't it? If you've got somebody else, it is wonderful because we get to celebrate things and we totally understand what has been involved in creating the successes for our clients within our business. And my husband's really, really supportive, and he celebrates these things for me as well. And he knows a lot about, I talk to him a lot about what I'm doing in my business, but he doesn't co-own it. So it is different, and it's wonderful having that. And those times when, you're in the troughs or so on, it's nice to have somebody there that understands that as well, and wants to kind of plot, what do we do next? Where do we want to go with this?
I think, as you said, a lot of people do think they sort of wish for a co-founder, thinking it'll be easier. And I have to say, not to be too cynical or negative, but 9 times out of 10, I hear negative stories about the co-founder piece. So I think you've been lucky, sensible. Obviously, you met when you were young, and you've gone through a lot of ups and downs personally and professionally, and you've obviously worked through those tricky times. So as you said, it's not necessarily sort of the easy route, but it's amazing that you do have each other there. I suppose you've mentioned a little bit your different offerings. Can you map out a little bit, what does your business model? So you've been coaching yourself, you have an accreditation, coach training. Tell us about what that looks like.
So the main bit of our business is we are a globally accredited coaching training organization. So we train people in everything from beginner through to advanced level in coaching qualifications. So from an ILM perspective, which represents the qualification bit, we have level 3, level 5 and level 7. Level 7 is that master's level. And they're also accredited by the EMCC and also the ICF, the International Coach Federation. EMCC is European Mentoring and Coaching Council. We also have our emotions coaching practitioner training, which is Coach CPD, which is also accredited. And we also will be releasing in the new year some bite-size access to learning, because we know that not everybody has £5,000 to be able to spend on a coaching course, but might really want some of those things to be part of it. Or we have a lot of coaches that might have trained with other providers, didn't know that we existed, and then they actually they want to do stuff with us, and they might have identified some gaps in what they've done. We also have a membership, which is for coaches that want to develop their businesses, and that's a paid membership. So anybody can join that, aspiring coaches through to coaches that have been trained for a long time or are undergoing training. And then, yes, I coach in my own right. So in my own right, I'm an executive coach, and I specialize in working with CEOs or those on a CEO pathway who are looking for that alignment between, the strategy that they're planning in the business and for their lives, but also with their emotional experience, because you can do very well but also feel very empty or disconnected. And so helping them to figure that out. So we talk through everything from, their business strategies, their relationship with their son, to, their marriage, all sorts of different things. And I really, really love that work. It's such a privilege. I really enjoy, the one-to-one, as well as enjoying the group work that I do with the training as well. It's, that is really rewarding to have those two parts. And when I think back to 2015, which is when we started training coaches, it's like, who were we to think that we could train coaches? And I, as kind of look back on myself only 7 years ago, feels like a very long time ago, but just think, wow, where did she get that confidence from? Where did they get that confidence to do it? But I honestly can stand here. I'm so proud of what we've created. It's all about quality. It's all about focused on the experience of the learner. And I think that's partly where we have been so successful. And then the podcast is free for people to access, the Coaching Crowd podcast. So there's an episode out every Monday, and we cover all sorts of different coaching topics, and people can nominate what they want us to talk about. And that also, we have our Coaching Crowd Facebook group, which again is a free community for coaches. There's about 3,000 people in there, just coming in and asking questions, just to find your people in life, that people that are caring, they're compassionate, they're courageous, and they really want to support other people. And I think when I was in, my in-house roles, I always in some way felt that I was fighting again, not fighting, but I wasn't with loads of people that thought or felt the same way. So I always had great feedback from, the employees and obviously from senior people, because I got promoted. But for me, there was just something missing, like emotions weren't really welcome from anybody, really. And I think that's part of our human experience. And so to put that to one side for me was just, that's potential, I think, that's missed. So it's great to see where organizations are going now from a mental health perspective and a well-being perspective, and just looking at those wider aspects. So I'm enjoying that. And when I think about my children entering the workplace, or maybe they'll have their own businesses, thinking about what is the legacy that we want to create, it's a really important part of that careers conversation.
And it's exciting to see organizations evolve, because I left that world in 2013, at least officially, my job, and part of that for me and others who leave corporate, where it's not that I hated my job in any way, but there was certain aspects of negativity towards that kind of setup. And I do think that the conversations that are happening now about diversity, things like quiet quitting, great resignation, now the career cushioning is the latest thing, all these things, I think are important conversations to have around well-being and flexibility and so on. So yes, hopefully organizations are sort of waking up to that and evolving too.
Well, it's interesting because, a big driver for me setting up the business or leaving my role was my husband worked away at the time. So he worked away 50% of the time. I had my first child. We knew we wanted to have a second child if we were able to. And I didn't want to have the conversation about, is it okay if I leave early to go and collect my child from the nursery, or knowing they probably would be ill quite often. And I just didn't want to have that dynamic. Because back then, and I work for a good organization, but I just didn't want that relationship. I wanted to have the freedom, because I, always work above and beyond in whatever I'm doing. So I trust myself in that way. So I didn't want to have that relationship. And I often say to my husband, I just don't think people should employ people unless they trust them to, to be able to manage their own work. But he comes from a military background. So for him, as he's transitioned into the corporate world, he just has very low expectations, you know, and I'm probably at the other end of the spectrum where I have very high expectations. And so, you know, I think it's helped him to have some of the conversations that he perhaps wouldn't think that he could have. So we are influenced, as you said earlier, obviously by our upbringing, by the environments that we've been in as well. So yeah, hopeful for the future.
Yeah, but low expectations in what sense? Because that pivot is interesting from military. I speak to professional sports people as well who are having to go into the corporate world. So from the military, what was his sort of mindset going into corporate, would you say?
Well, you know, when you think about asking for term time only working, you know, he thinks absolutely not. I cannot do that. I won't be thought of in the same way. If it came to a salary negotiation, you know, no, I can't do that because, you know, that's what it says there, and I can't do that. Or I don't know, if he leaves early for a meeting, he thinks that's part of that's his time that he donates to work, and he doesn't, you know, that there isn't that kind of toil thing, even though, you know, the contract would say that. So it's very duty bound. So again,
sort of the hierarchy and rules.
Yeah, and I think it's just a different dynamic because it's great. It's nice to go above and beyond if you enjoy your role and, you know, and you're getting things from it. But I think it's just seeing that equal relationship between employee and employer. And just supporting them to have a voice and just be able to, to contribute highly, you know, to the organisation. But it's coming, So his military experience has definitely created some beliefs about that relationship that he, you know, and I think he, you know, the organisation he works in, it's a global organisation, so he transitioned. Initially, he was self-employed, doing overseas work, and then he did business development, and then he retrained in health and safety, and did training there. And he's in his second role, and he's doing really, really well. And he's dyslexic. He has, he's had some challenges along the way, again related to beliefs about self, you know, related to that. And so it's been amazing we've always supported each other in our careers, you know, in different ways at different times. And it's brilliant to see that he's found a role that he's great at, he gets good feedback from, and it's totally different environment. And so our children have had lots of different influences, you know, academic, entrepreneurial, more practical. He actually had his own business as well at one point. He tried that out. Actually doing kids' parties. I mean, how different is that? Wow. But he was very passionate about, from his experiences at school, and he was dyslexic, you know, that one size doesn't fit all, and being able to engage. He did forest school qualification, and so he was using that. And I know he's very passionate from a management point of view about how to support people with diverse needs, you know, in your team. So yeah,
I love that, bringing his values and also the transferable skills from military. I think there's some really interesting ways of bringing that through. You mentioned there the term time working, so I'm really curious about this, because for me and for many people, you know, it's the freedom and flexibility, the autonomy of working for yourself that really gives us that work-life integration, as I'd call it, and so on. Yeah. You're founding a pretty big, successful company. You've got a co-founder. How do you balance that ambition and drive and the responsibility of being a co-founder with having your children, with school, with everything else, with the adventure and so on?
It's something that is under constant review in my mind, and like what success is for me, I think it constantly evolves. So I have definitely, you know, I have worked evenings throughout the years. I actually, you know, I would naturally start work in the evening and work through to the early hours. Like that's
that's your natural rhythm.
I'm not part of the 5 a.m. club. Yeah. That definitely would be the way that I would do it. And we've been able to manage that at different times, because my husband would, you know, he'd look after the kids, do the bedtime routine, and I would be working that evening. Which is fine, but actually it's almost that as my children have got older, it's almost become more challenging. And as they've, you know, have different needs, I'm at that point now where actually I'm not going to work evenings anymore. So we've built into the plan that even with our evening training, that we won't be facilitating the trainings in the evening. So we still want to enable those people that evening training works well for to be able to access our training, but it won't be us. It will be a team of trainers that can deliver it in the way that we would. And yeah, term time only working. So we've done that over the last couple of years. So bear in mind that's still probably 9 years where we have worked in different ways through the holidays. So sometimes, taking it all off, sometimes taking some of it off. And we've just kind of learned as we've gone along around what works for us. So I love now that for me, it's much clearer. I don't work term time, so I don't need to rely on anybody else to look after the children. I get to spend that time with them. We get to have adventures in those time frames. What was the issue before? Well, it's mindset. So we were talking earlier, weren't we? I was saying that, I used to tell myself the story that my clients that I coached on a monthly basis, I couldn't not coach them then in August because then I wouldn't be fulfilling, it's harder to even to say, isn't it? We'll have 6 sessions over 8 months. And actually, when I made the decision and I tested it out, nobody cared. And better than that, they respected me for holding those boundaries. And that's what's made it so easy to hold those boundaries, is I actually feel proud that I have put those boundaries in place. And I feel that I'm honouring, the children as much as I am honouring my own time. So I'm proud of that, but I can't sit here and say that I started a business and held those things, because also in the early days, you got to find the business, and when you get the business, actually clients will say to you, oh yeah, we want you to do that, but we need you to do it now. So do you take the work or do you not take the work? Do you make it happen? And Zoe and I are quite, we'll tend to kind of make things work, one way or another. But what I'm going to be doing next year is experimenting with moving down to 4 days a week. But I was saying that last week I took a day off on the Friday because we had our first cohort on our emotions coaching practitioner program. And what I'd learned before when we've done things is actually it's quite exhausting. You're on this big high, it's going well, feedback's great. And then the next day or that evening, you're absolutely wiped out. So I thought, right, don't book anything in, which was great. And then I missed. I wanted to do some stuff for work, but what I want to do is to be able to have a lie-in if I want to, or go back to bed after I've dropped the kids to school if I'm that exhausted. And if I want to read some of a coaching book, I can. Or if I want to write part of a proposal, I can. Or if I want to write down some ideas for new training, I can. Or I might just go and buy birthday presents for my son because that's something that I want to give time to. So for me, it's about not having to be somewhere at a particular time. That for me is the protection of time. And I might choose to do some work. But what I suppose for me, the work that I do, the business, is what I love. So it's not something that I never dread getting up on a Monday morning. I don't have any of that. I'm excited because I look at my diary and I plan my diary so that mostly there's not too much stuff in it. I also only plot stuff in during school hours. So with the emotions coaching practitioner program, we did 9:15 until 2:45 on the 4 days. And that is so that people, whoever they are that might have responsibilities that mean that they're not going to get there, they don't have to kind of put themselves out in that way. So, and we listen to what our learners and our clients want or need. We are seeing an uptake in people wanting in-person facilitation again, which is a challenge because we've moved everything online, which means that all that travel time. So I used to travel 7-hour round trip pretty much on a fortnightly basis to do three sessions of coaching. It's absolutely bonkers, really, when actually we could be sat here,
so
not creating that carbon footprint and also not having that, not missing the children's bedtime or getting there just as that's happening. And so I think that is we have done the occasional piece of in-person because I think community is important, but it's not something that we will commit to on a regular basis.
Yeah, and again, I think hopefully the culture's shifted there. The expectation isn't quite there in many areas, and I think there'll be perhaps more hybrids and flexibility and so on. But I agree, I sort of have a hunger for in-person to get out and about after many years of working even pre-COVID sort of by myself at home. But at the same time, the travel implication, the cost, the time and so on is a bit of a hindrance there. It's interesting that you say, I always warn people of, yes, you love your work, but that doesn't mean that you should be doing it all the time. But you mentioned several times it's the choice, right? Because I think for me, I work 3 days a week, but the kids are at nursery those 3 days all year round. So I don't yet have the term time, but I'm very curious about this model because next year I'll have a daughter at school. So it's definitely something I like to consider. I met a client a few weeks ago who did every other. She did a she called it a 9-day fortnight. So every other Friday was off, which worked really well, because if every Friday is off, you can easily fill it up with regular appointments and things. But actually every other week, people at work barely notice you're gone, she said. And at the same time, it's literally completely free for her. So you can do errands, have a massage, you can catch up on work, but it's open to you. And I think that's what's really powerful. I remember years ago, pre-Christmas was booking in clients right up until the end. And I thought, I've got to support them and deliver. Every single one of them cancelled at the last second because of this. They don't want to have calls at Christmas either, right? So for me too, I'm really glad to hear that for you. I role model for myself, for my clients who are trying to set those boundaries too, for my kids, hopefully as well. So as you say at the beginning, it can be challenging. You have that energy and desire to work more, but also you do need to. If you have a client who suggests something, it's hard to say no at the beginning, but it's inspiring to hear the possibilities, the term time, the possible 4 days a week. And as you say, having that respect and that boundary being understood and upheld.
And I think the phase that we're in at the moment is about learning how to be CEOs. So now that our business has got to a stage where, we always used to say like, well, we don't have business premises. So do we even really have a business? Like if we just decided we weren't going to do anything anymore, we could just stop. But now the business has moved beyond that. And so as we're taking on, employees and broader freelancers, we've got to learn to how can we be good in this role, and what does that mean for us? How do we navigate this? And so because we've always done everything, so we've designed and facilitated, we've done everything you can think of. And the phase that we're in now is we can't continue to create the quality and depth of what we do and facilitate all of the suite of things that we do. And that's a whole kind of psychological process to go through, trusting self, trusting others. So that's a work in progress. And so that's where the continual challenge and excitement is. Like, well, what could we create next? Have we created our best thing yet? Or is that still to come? What does this look like? And when we created the podcast, like the kids were involved in choosing the music, and for them to see like the podcast go to number one, the book go to number one, like those are like moments that they will remember. And I think I'm hoping that they will be anchor points for them as well as our clients, because we're not that many steps ahead of the people that come on our training. Not everybody wants to be a freelance coach. There's amazing managers and leaders that are like, I just want to be a better manager and leader. And like, amazing. Yeah, great. We'll support you to do that. But for those that are freelancing, we aren't that far ahead. So what we want to do is, when we started in business, we'd see people that were successful and we were like, you'd never get the information. Nobody would share anything. So it's guesswork. That's not our approach. We believe the world is a better place the more highly qualified, ethical coaches or people with coaching skills that there are. So we want to pass on what we have learned, not to say do this, but just say, hey, this is how we went about it. And here's how if you want to, here's how you could do that, and break it down so that it becomes easier. And that is our passion. Although it's not what we set out to do, we can't feel that we have a responsibility to support the coaches that are coming behind us, to help them up. Because when I think back to the organizations that trusted us to come in early on in our career, and I think that's amazing that they trusted us to do that. And I'm so grateful for all of those experiences. So how can we help? So we love to recommend other people, that we trust and believe in. And we appreciate it when other people feel that way about the services we offer as well.
Yeah, I love that. Not being too far ahead, as you said, because it can feel so intimidating if people are sort of 10 years ahead and you just think there's no way I can ever get to that kind of following and being inspired by others' successes and not threatened. So, Jo, where can we find you and hear more about the wonderful things that you're doing?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as Jo Wheatley. If you search Jo Wheatley in good company, you'll find me. Our business website is igcompany.co.uk, and you can find information about all of our courses there if you're interested to qualify as a coach or do CPD. I mentioned earlier the Coaching Crowd Facebook, the Coaching Crowd podcast. We have an Instagram. My Instagram's rubbish. I set it up and haven't really done much with it, and I should. So that's a work in progress. But there is a Coaching Crowd one there as well. I think they're the main places, really. We also actually have a quiz. So it's like a 5-minute quiz. If you're a bit bamboozled with where do you even start if you want to train to be a coach, what level would be right for me, then you can take our quiz, which is mycoachingcourse.com, and that will, based on your answers, it will suggest which level is right for you. And then if you want to have a chat with either myself or our training coordinator, they will make time just to talk to you about your specific situation if there's anything more that you want to find out. So yeah, we're very accessible. I want to help as many people as possible. And, I've done my version of a career pivot. It wasn't planned, but I really love it. And I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I've had along the way. And Anna, your own experience and what you've created, we were talking about earlier. I just love speaking to other people that have created, I believe we can design our lives. And I believe that we can find a way to achieve the life that we design, or at least I find it helpful to live my life in that way, with that belief.
Oh my goodness, 100%. That's a beautiful place to leave it at. That's my entire ethos and mantra. So I love that. And as you say, not giving prescriptions for doing it a particular way, but having it open, and it is choices and it will evolve. And that's also the adventure, I suppose. So Jo, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to have you on. Massive congratulations to your success so far. And here's to this new phase of elevating into that CE role and whatever other exciting things still to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Outside of Business Academy is a self-paced course for you to work through in your own time to learn and implement the foundations of building a profitable business that lets you escape the 9-to-5. So if you're full of great ideas but lack the knowledge and experience to turn them into a viable business that will actually support your desired lifestyle, or you feel like you're doing all the right things and yet you're just not getting the traction and results that you're after, you have come to the right place. I'm here to help you design a profitable and enjoyable business that gives you freedom from the 9-to-5. Register for the Academy and get started learning today at onestepoutside.com/course. That's onestepoutside.com/course.